In the heart of New York City, where ambulance sirens screamed like mechanical banshees through the canyons of glass and steel, stood Bellevue Hospital, a place older than the city's skyline, older than many of its darkest rumors, older even than the idea of modern medicine itself. People whispered that the hospital had memories, and that some of those memories still walked its halls. On the night the haunting began, a cold rain hammered the windows of the East Wing, an unused, supposedly sealed part of Bellevue reserved decades ago for patients no one wanted to remember. Most staff avoided it. Most patients didn't even know it existed. But new intern Ethan Caldwell had been working a double shift and took the wrong stairwell after a late-night supply run. He reached the bottom of the poorly lit stairwell, pushing through a door expecting the main ward. Instead, the air turned colder. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with peeling paint and outdated equipment abandoned in the shadows. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a rhythmic hum that felt almost alive. Ethan frowned. This wasn't the main ward. This wasn't even supposed to be accessible. A metallic clang echoed down the corridor, as though someone knocked a tray from a table. The sound reverberated through the hollow hall, scraping at his nerves. "Hello?" Ethan called, voice trembling. "Is someone down here?" No answer. Just the hum of lights. Just the sound of rain far above. Just the thud of his heartbeat against his ribs. He stepped forward, every instinct telling him to turn around. Yet something deeper, curiosity, perhaps, kept his feet moving. As he approached the nurse's station, he saw a figure standing behind it. A woman. Tall. Stiff. Still. Her uniform was antiquated. White dress, shiny buttons, folded cap. The kind of uniform nurses hadn't worn in half a century. Her posture was perfectly upright, hands clasped politely in front of her, head tilted slightly downward as though she were quietly waiting for instructions. Ethan exhaled in relief. "Thank God," he muttered. "I thought I was alone down here. Sorry I got lost. Do you know how to get back to?" The woman lifted her head. Her eyes were solid white. Not clouded like the eyes of the blind, but devoid of pupils entirely. Blank, empty, reflective like polished bone. Her pale skin stretched too tightly over her skull, as if her face had forgotten where flesh should rest. Ethan froze. For one horrible second, he thought she was dead. Then she smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, but wide, far wider than the rigidity of her skin should have allowed. Her jaw cracked softly with the motion. Click, click, click. Then she spoke. But her lips didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." The voice didn't echo through the hallway. It whispered inside Ethan's head, too close, too intimate, as though spoken directly into the folds of his brain. Ethan staggered backwards, slamming into a rusted gurney with a yelp. The nurse glided, not walked, around the counter. Her shoes didn't touch the floor. Her toes hovered just slightly above it, as though something unseen puppeteered her body from above. Her head twitched in short, jerking motions. "We don't accept walk-ins, not anymore." Her smile widened further, splitting the corners of her mouth enough for bloodless cracks to form along her cheeks. Ethan ran. His shoes screeched against the floor as he sprinted back toward the stairwell. The hallway seemed impossibly long, stretching farther than it had before, as if the geometry of the place shifted with each terrified step. Behind him came the rapid stutter of bones clicking into new positions, joints bending the wrong way, feet tapping against the air. He didn't dare look. He burst through the stairwell door, slammed it closed, and bolted up the steps two at a time. He didn't stop until he reached the main lobby, collapsing against the information desk, gasping for breath. A security officer hurried over. "Kid, you all right?" Ethan tried to speak, but only shaking breaths escaped him. "What happened?" Ethan managed 2 words. "East Wing." The officer frowned. "Impossible. That wing's been sealed since '71. Ethan shook his head violently. "I saw a nurse. She spoke to me." He froze as a cold draft swept through the lobby. The lights overhead flickered. The shadows along the walls deepened. And from the direction of the East Wing stairwell came a whisper he recognized instantly. We'll finish your check-in later. 12 hours passed after Ethan's encounter, but the hospital refused to return to normal. It felt vigilant, like something huge and unseen had turned its attention toward every person inside its walls. Whispers traveled quickly among staff. Patients complained of cold hands pressing against them in their sleep. Visitors swore they saw someone standing alone at the end of the corridor, motionless, watching. Thermal cameras shorted out one by one. Ethan hadn't left the hospital. Every time he approached the exit, something subtle stopped him. An urgent call for help, a critical patient, a missing nurse. Something kept him inside. Something familiar. He couldn't forget the nurse from the East Wing. And worse, she hadn't forgotten him. By evening, he found himself walking past the East Wing stairwell again. He didn't want to be there. His legs simply carried him, as though following an invisible tether pulled tight around his ribs. The stairwell door stood slightly open. Its hinges creaked softly, breathing like lungs. A draft seeped from the gap. Cold, sterile, unnatural. Ethan took a shaky step backward.
No.
Not again. I'm not going back there. The lights above buzzed violently. A fluorescent tube exploded with a sharp pop. And then, faintly, echoing up the stairwell.
Click, click, click.
Bone against bone. Joint against joint. The nurse was moving. Ethan stumbled away, heading toward the nurse's station. At least 3 staff members stood talking, nurses he trusted, nurses who could help him. But as he approached, their conversation stopped abruptly. They stared past him, eyes widening, color draining from their faces. Ethan didn't want to turn around. He felt her before he saw her. The cold soaked into his spine first, then into his skull like icy fingers. Slowly, reluctantly, he turned. The nurse from the East Wing stood just feet behind him. Her uniform was no longer clean. Blood, old, blackened, flaking, streaked her sleeves. Her white eyes rolled back and forth beneath her eyelids like something alive inside her head was trying to escape. Her jaw hung slack, more unhinged than before. The nurses behind Ethan fled without a word. The East Wing nurse didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. She only stared at him, head twitching sideways with small, insect-like jerks. Then she whispered directly into his mind again. Room 314 is open now. Ethan shook his head, voice cracking. I'm not going anywhere with you. Her head snapped to the side, so violently, it nearly rotated 180 degrees. Her smile tore wider. You already checked in. The hallway lights darkened one by one behind her, as though a wave of shadow crawled from the East Wing toward the main hospital. Patients screamed from nearby rooms. Alarms blared, sirens wailing at once as every vital monitor in the wing flatlined. Ethan staggered backward until his shoulders struck the wall. The nurse took one step forward. Just one. But it covered 10 feet of hallway effortlessly, her body snapping into existence directly in front of him like a glitching image. Her breath, cold and chemical, washed over his face. Her voice slid into his skull. You saw the ward that never closes. You spoke to the nurse who never clocks out. And now, her fingers, longer now, too many joints, rested against his chest. You belong here. The hospital lights died. The screams went silent. And Ethan's world collapsed into an endless white void, the smell of antiseptic and decay fusing into one unbearable fog. Somewhere inside that void, the clicking started again.
Click, click, click.
The sound of a nurse approaching. A nurse who had died decades before Bellevue sealed the East Wing. A nurse who never left. A nurse who wanted one thing: more patients. If you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Because every night, someone new disappears inside the hospital's halls. And sometimes, when the lights flicker in your own home, that's when the nurse chooses her next patient. If you're still watching this, she might already be on her way. So before she reaches your room, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reason to sleep with the lights on. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you saw the nurse standing at the end of your hallway? Sleep well. If you can,